Welcome to Business Talk Sister Talk. I'm Becca.
And I'm Ruthie.
And today's episode title is The Things We Have Learned from Podcasting. This episode is actually going to be something that we're probably going to do annually. And we might actually make it into 2 episodes because we've learned so many things this year. Because we just put out semi-recently our 52nd episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
And we've learned a lot. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about it with you guys because there was a lot of things that we went through this year that you probably didn't know about. And also things that we learned along the way with you on our podcast. So yeah, the first thing Ruthie's going to talk about.
Well, first I just wanted to mention that these are not only emotional things that we've learned, but they're also really practical things that we've learned too. The first one is a practical item that we learned, and it's that people always listen to your first episode, or almost always. So if they're going to check you out, they want to find out what you're about as a podcast, so they'll go back and listen to your first episode. One thing that I really like that we did is we recorded probably our first 5 to 7 episodes in one batch. It was a weekend that we just went through and pre-recorded a lot of them together. And then we had a really good feel of what we wanted to do with our podcast and what we wanted to be about. And then we went back and recorded our first episode. So then we just had laid all the foundation work to be able to feel prepared to record the first one, as opposed to starting with that. And I'm really glad that we did that, even though looking back, our first episode is oh man. But if you watch the first episode of Hannah Montana, it's garbage. Okay? I'm just saying, it gets better. Yeah, so just keep in mind that people always listen to your first episode, so you really want to lay the foundation of what you want to do in your podcast with that episode.
Mm-hmm. But also, yeah, I'm encouraged about the fact that most pilot shows, they're kind of ridiculous, and then if they flop, sometimes they go back and redo them to say, oh, okay, this is this is how we're gonna change things up to try to get this different audience interested. So yeah, I think that was definitely encouraging to me to not be oh, we were terrible at the beginning. I mean, we still are sometimes, but
we have our moments, that's for sure. Which leads us to another point that is a little more silly, but still just as relevant.
Yeah, and this one we recently learned, very unprofessional. Do not eat while interviewing someone.
I was asking the questions, and then because I knew Becca had just gotten off of work, so she was still trying to eat, and then I paused and Becca goes, okay, so
it was so obvious.
I was stop.
Yeah, so we had to we had to redo that. Thankfully, we were interviewing one of Ruthie's friends, so it wasn't they were very offended, so that was good.
Yeah.
But I think that feeds into the other point we have about being really flexible, because when you're doing podcast recordings, especially if they're with people from different time zones and stuff, there can be a lot of confusion in terms of, oh, well, we set it for this time, and I always try to cap this is the time zone that we are in. Please make sure to check your time zone, because there can be some people that all of a sudden are oh, I didn't know it was right now, I'm so sorry, or something like that, because time zones can really affect that if you're not paying attention.
Or the opposite of that, where they all of a sudden are on the meeting an hour early and you thought you had so much time, and then Becca calls you and they're they're on the meeting right now.
Yeah, we've definitely had that happen too, where we've told someone what time it is, and then they're expecting to be early, and we just got to flow with it to get that figured out.
And that's kind of where prep work comes in. So we're going to talk about a little bit of what we do to prepare for an interview with somebody else, and then we'll talk about what we do to prepare for just us talking. So Becca, you want to explain how we do our prep meeting with people we want to interview?
Yeah. So our prep kind of is a little bit different based on the person, because there's some people that we've talked to that are very nervous about doing an interview. And I love those people because the majority of the time they have such good information that they keep to themselves.
And no one's ever asked them before.
Yeah. And so, but with that, you know, we kind of really work on saying, hey, like, if you want to redo something, just take a pause and restart what you were talking about, and we'll fix it, whatever. And so, a lot of times they really want all of the questions beforehand so they can really prepare. And I love those people because when they come to the meeting, literally, like, there's some of the most tangible, actionable interviews afterwards. Like, I feel like I could walk away and start that business right away because they really put the thought into making sure that it was going to be useful information to somebody else. And I think that a lot of times, what I found is people who do a lot of podcasts interviews, they don't do that, right? Because they're so used to doing things on the fly that they're doing it just solely on their talent alone. And that can not lead to as much quality. So and that's really a personality thing too, right? Because I am totally that person that I can just be like, oh, let's do this by the seat of our pants. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is quality to our audience. And Ruthie has a little bit more to say about that too.
Well, I was just going to talk about our old intern, Darby, is definitely a prepper. So if you ask her to do something, she's going to have all the data, she's going to have all the resources and everything, but she's not the kind of person that's just going to fly by the seat of her pants and then just like go for it. And I think, so there's a difference in personality there, but I think that both are valuable. It's just that sometimes with people like Becca and I, where we just kind of go and then we learn a lot from ourselves while we're talking because we've never thought of the things we're saying until we're saying it. That sometimes you can have to try to sift through a lot of that rambling before you get to the point we're trying to make. And then whereas people like Darby is they know what they're trying to say because they've already written it down and they've already got all the information all compiled.
And it's just so much more succinct of, wow, look at the value here.
Yeah.
So we love those kind of prep meetings where we'll get together with somebody and then say, this is what we're thinking about doing. Here's maybe the topic that we've been talking back and forth about, and sometimes we don't even get to like deciding what the topic is until we've talked with them a little bit and find out what their real like personality is or what they think they can talk most confidently about. And so for other people though, they don't have the time for that prep meeting, and we just basically like get to know them right before we do the interview. But Ruthie's gonna have a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the kind of the flow of how we do things is if it's someone that has the prep meeting beforehand, is we will book that 15-minute meeting or so, talk with them, kind of get a feel for what it would look like to do an interview. And it's really important to know what your audience wants so that while you're talking to them, like they might come in having an idea of, oh, I could talk about this and this and this. But then when you think about, okay, but I don't know if that really is what our audience needs to hear. So as you start talking to them, then you can say, well, actually, I can see that you're really knowledgeable in this area. What if we talked about that? Instead of just slapping on a title of an episode and saying, can you do an episode on this? Actually talking with them and figuring out, oh, actually, they would be really good to talk about this. And then when you call that out, then they're like, oh, yeah, I do know a lot about that. And so that can be fun, too, to just kind of like draw on their knowledge and affirm what they already know. So that's kind of the flow of that. We usually decide. Sometimes it's nice to go in with an idea of what the title is that you want to talk with them about. So then you can kind of frame when they're talking. You're like, okay, let's see how this aligns with the title that we want. So we've done it both ways, where we come in with a title or when we've just like come up with a title while we talk with people. But that's the first 15-minute meeting. And then we book our next meeting, which is usually like an hour long. We spend the first like half hour to 15 minutes talking with them, just getting to know them, and then kind of thinking about how we can incorporate areas of their personality or areas that we've learned about them in the episodes. And then we do our like 20-minute interview with them, and then afterwards we like talk and debrief. And that's probably my favorite time is the afterwards conversation, and that's my favorite part.
So the thing that Ruthie kind of didn't talk about in that is that she is really good at the processes, right? She loves that. So I love just kind of throwing things together, but she's always evaluating, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we add to our process for next time. And so one of the things that we do in our process now is we'll send them like an intro email that kind of says, here's who we are. This is a description of what we do. This is where you can find us. So it's all the links that they possibly could need to just like check things out. This is what we like. These are the 4 questions we try to ask. And then for this episode, here's the things that we would absolutely love to ask you. And so for those people that love prep time or like love to get into those things and have things ready to go, that's really helpful for them. Other times, it also helps us where we don't catch somebody off guard and we're like, hey, was there a question in there that you didn't feel comfortable answering? So we try to make sure that whatever we're going to talk about with them is something they really are confident in. And otherwise that leads to a lot of dead space. And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes we do have guests that are internal processors that are like, I would love to take this home and sit with it for like a couple days before we talk about my opinion on that or whatever.
And when Becca mentioned those 4 core questions that we asked, that's what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and what free resources or tools would you recommend to somebody else who wants to start out doing this. And then in the how you do it section, that's when we kind of waterfall into our whole list of other questions, and those are specific to the person that we're interviewing. So then we'll kind of work from that, and like Becca was saying, give it those to them in advance.
Yeah, and I want to say that this is not typical of other podcasts. It's, I mean, maybe like really big podcasts, I don't know, that have like a whole team of people that work on these things, but for the other podcasts that we've been interviewed on, this is not typical of their process. We've just found that from our listeners, they'll tell us that they like our questions because they're so specific and they're really helpful. And I do think for us, it's helpful to have a little bit of understanding of the topic at hand before we interview, so our questions can be specific. Because otherwise, if you're just learning about an industry for the very first time in your first conversation with them, it can't get as deep and like technical as it could be. And that's where I think I find a lot of value in, because I learned so much from other people when we're asking them questions. Yeah. And so the other part that we didn't talk about, and there's 2 things here, like post-production and then also how we prep for our own episodes without a guest. So we're going to talk about post-production first. So when you do post-production, if you're doing a recording via like a software like Zoom or like Hangouts or whatever, you have to like download that, and then you have to listen to the audio quality to make sure there's not like really high ups and downs or whatever. Or if somebody is like, oh, can we take that out, right? Then you go back through and you edit those things. That's the boring part. It takes a long time. But then we do a couple other things. You guys already know we do these things, but we'll just talk about them with you, because I think it's important to know that there's a lot of like cross promotion or like additional pieces you can cut and make and create off of one episode, right? So we take that episode, we upload it to YouTube, and Ruthie goes through and she checks everything for subtitles, right?
I write all the subtitles.
Yeah, she does.
Yikes.
It takes her a really long time. And YouTube just like updated some stuff with their subtitles, so it's like a little easier.
It is. That was amazing. My roommate talks about this all the time. She's always like, whenever you move out and we have, I'll remember this of you, is that you came out while I was working and you asked me, are you in a meeting? And then I said, yes. You turned to our other roommate and was like, YouTube just updated their subtitles and it's so much better now. And then she was like, Ruthie, I'm literally in a meeting. But she was like, you were just so excited about it. And like, I just get really excited about little things because they make my life way easier. So anyways, check it out. YouTube subtitles, way better now.
Yeah, so, and that's actually something that we found on YouTube. I think it was like, was it like 5% or like 12% or something? I texted Ruthie about this. It was somewhere in there. It was like a lower percentage, but like some people actually do listen to our episodes with the subtitles on
12%,
YouTube.
yeah.
12%, okay.
Of our listeners specifically, yeah.
Yeah, which so we were kind of being bums about that for a little bit, and Darby, our intern, was like, no, you guys need to take this seriously, because what about the people that are hearing impaired and they want to participate in a podcast, but they can't. And that whole like disability like compliance and wanting to be able to serve people in that way was something that she really was like passionate about, and we both like felt really convicted by that. And we're like, okay, like yeah, we'll do that. All right. And Ruthie really has taken that seriously, and I appreciate that she has, because even though we don't have like the best grammar and while we're talking, obviously, versus when we write things up in a formal sentence, I do think that that's been valuable, to be able to provide that to people. And so when we take those subtitles, then Ruthie goes through the work of making that into a blog. And then when we post our blog post, we actually like throw that in there after the podcast is live. And then because we want it to be so valuable, that because this is the thing I hate about podcasts, is when I listen to something, I'm like, wow, that was amazing. And then I'm not going to go back and try to find the exact place in the podcast recording where they talked about that resource. And so that's what I love about our podcast, is that Ruthie goes through and puts all the links to valuable content that we talked about, so that if you ever need to go back and reference something, which we do all the time with our podcasts, we're like, oh, we talked to this one person and they had that really great resource. Where is that? And then we'll go find their episode and scroll down to whatever they were talking about and find that link. Oh, it's right there. And so we want that to be available to you guys too, because there's no point in like creating content if it's not actually helpful in the end to people. So that's part of our post-production. I design all the image graphics, which we all know my design skills are like hit and miss.
It's been getting pretty good though. Becca's really put a lot of effort into using different tools to kind of play around with what options they have and overlaying things, and she's been getting really unique graphics because of all the work that she's been putting in that. And when we like take pictures and stuff, then we try to incorporate that and make it a little bit more personal and things too, which we've been doing over time.
Yeah, so that's a helpful thing from our guests. I'll ask them for like a headshot and like their logo or any like product or service they want us to like have, or if they want us to have links in the blog post to those things. So that's really helpful, because then I can use those in the design thing. And I did forget to mention this, and I don't want to leave it out. Our sister Mia is like an amazing young entrepreneurial graphic designer, and she's been doing a lot of stuff for us with our graphic design too when I need help on things. And that's just been so fun because she's totally improved in her skills. And I think we still need to work on like getting our total flow down of everything, but I really do think she's been very helpful in cutting down my workload on that. So yeah, we do those image graphics for the blog post, and then I like to do one specifically to our guests that they can use that's different from ours, and then we make our own for the Instagram, or to like auto post on Instagram as well as Facebook. And that's a semi-recent feature that like Facebook rolled out, where they integrated that so you can actually schedule out for Instagram and Facebook at the same time.
So nice.
Oh my goodness, it saves so much time.
Game changer.
Well, because then it was like you had to like put it on your schedule to remember on our release date to go back in and post on Instagram. And I mean, it's not like it was terrible or anything, but it was definitely good to have that. So that's kind of our post-production stuff that we do. And in the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about our experiences being interviewed, as well as
the emotional sides of podcasting and the anxiety that goes into that and all the things that you have to overcome with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that in our next episode, but we're going to transition to the gawk portion. And we have some like stories we've been just kind of talking about. So what's the first one we're going to talk about today?
The time that Mom burned your pants.
Oh my word. Okay. So my dad was getting a new job, and we decided, like, they put him up in this little apartment, and we were trying to like,
little is an understatement. It was literally a postage stamp. It was so small.
Yeah, it was super tiny. And
keep in mind too, there's like, at this point Andrew had graduated, but everybody else. There's 6 kids in our family.
Yeah, so we went down there to try to find a house to move to. And I mean, we weren't all living in a tiny apartment.
That would have been a hot mess.
No, but we were just there for like visiting to see if we could find a house, whatever. So that night I was sleeping, and apparently I was like in a lot of pain while I was sleeping, and my mom decided that, oh, you know, it would be really good to like have something like put a hot pack on or whatever. But obviously like we didn't have a hot pack.
We were in a teeny tiny apartment with nothing.
So she like grabs this washcloth and throws it in the microwave, but it wasn't wet. And then she like brings it over to me, and I'm like half asleep, and she's like, here, put this on. And I'm like, okay. So I like put it on my tummy because I'm like, well, maybe that'll help, whatever. And then I like fall back asleep.
And Becca does this thing when she's like half asleep and then wakes up to something suddenly where she just goes,
I'm just a whiny hot mess.
It is. It's just like everything she says is just like she's crying but also trying to speak.
Yeah. So then like all of a sudden I just have this pain, and I'm like, ow, what?
But she's not fully awake, so she wakes up like, and I'm like, dude, what's going on?
Yeah. So like I pull the covers up and like grab this washcloth and open it and realize that it's on fire. Like in the middle of the washcloth is like a huge hole, and it's just like smoldering outwards, and I'm like, ah!
And I looked at her pants, and it literally she was wearing these kind of like fleece pants, and it had burned a hole in her pajama pants. And I was like, dude, your pants are literally smoldering. And my mom came over, and instead of like, I don't know, saying that was, she just didn't say anything. She just grabbed the washcloth, threw it in the sink, and turned the water on. And I looked at Becca's stomach, and the washcloth was like orange, and it had stained her whole stomach orange.
So weird. And like it was just like a super scary experience afterwards, because I was like, wow, like it's a good thing that like this was actually less oxygen, because otherwise I would have probably started the whole bed on fire. And so anyways, yeah, so that was like a random experience.
So join us again next week for our second part of our experience with podcasting, our annual review. If you like our podcast, then check out our website, businesstalksistergawk.com, or follow us on Instagram. Thanks so much. Have a great week.